Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Canadian Professional Sales Association. Please note that you've been placed on mute for the duration of this webinar. You may participate throughout the webinar and ask questions during the Q&A session at the end using the Ask Question function in your GoToWebinar dashboard. Hosting today's webinar is Cindy Stradling. Sales agent, facilitator, and coach, Cindy brings over 25 years of practical hands-on business experience to her work. She has worked across various sectors, including production, logistics, materials management, retail, customer service, and sales. She has achieved her CSP designation through the CPSA and is a certified coach. Cindy works with entrepreneurs, individuals, and corporations such as Canon Canada, 3M Canada, and BMO. Now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Cindy to get started.
Okay, thank you so much, Kate. I'm really excited to be here. One of the things I'm really proud of is in 2019, I also got my CSL, which is Certified Leadership Leader through the CPSA. So super, super excited to be here. This is interactive. The webinar, you'll, like anything else, if you participate, you're going to, I believe you'll get more out of it. And you can there's going to be a couple of polls that we will work with during the conversation. And then throughout, if you have any questions, you can just put it in the chat box. This webinar is 1 hour in length, and there will be 2 polls, one after step 4, and one towards the end. And so why we're here today is really some of the outcomes that you're going to get. And I know this is part of your ongoing learning through the Canadian Professional Sales Association. So this course will actually count towards credit hours towards your CPSA. It's important to keep learning. I think that's the keys to the kingdom going forward, is to constantly keep learning. And we're going to talk about consultative selling and understanding and apply the elements of a good first call. And it really, we're going to be just really doing a bit of a lightning round on this 8 steps. And if you remember on your 3-day course, we did a much, much deeper dive. And the most important thing to understand about consultative selling, it's a process where you're in consultation with the customer. And it was funny because when I think back to when I first started in sales, I realized that I've always been a consultative salesperson. It was never ever about trying to sell the product or the service. It was always about what the customer needed and truly understanding. So this will help you move from a product conversation into business conversations. And these are the steps that we went through in the course, the 3-day course, and now we're going to be doing an overview here. And I don't know about you, but anytime I've taken any kind of a course, I haven't always remembered absolutely everything. So going through a refresher like this is fantastic because it'll reconnect you with the learning, and there might be a few things that it'll spark you back, go, oh yeah, now I remember. I talked about doing this, or I learned that, and I think that's super, super important. So first, let me acknowledge you for investing your valuable time being here today, because, and my commitment to you and my intention is to give you some new tools or remind you of some tools that you're already using. And so we're going to move along now. We're going to talk about the 8-step consultative sales process. And really, it's really most important is how you can adopt a true value-based approach, you know, where your mission is to add as much value to the customer's bottom line as possible. And of course, you're still going to want to be profitable and you have your own goals in mind, but ultimately it is the customers that you're mostly concerned about. And we're going to refer to the modern sales approach through everything as consultative selling. It's also known as, I've heard it called value-based selling, need-based selling, solution selling, ROI selling. Customer-focused selling was one that I read not very long ago. So, but the most important thing is that it really boils down to your customer, and what you're going to be doing is looking at their current state, their desired state, and really addressing the gap in between, and really identifying how you can help them. I'm not sure if you'll remember, but when we did the 3-day course, there was an example of a doctor. And if you think about it, if you went into your doctor and the doctor said, he gave you a prescription without asking any questions or trying to find out what was going on with you, it wouldn't make any sense. So we apply the same principles in consultative selling. We need to be able to diagnose and understand and make sure that what we're going to present to them as a possible solution is going to be a fit. And so it really starts with an ask, don't tell. Investigate, lots and lots of questions, open-ended questions, combination. If you remember in your course, there was a number of different types of questions, but I found personally a lot of open-ended questions, especially in the beginning, can help open the customer up. And it also shows them that that you care, you're going to be doing your homework, and that you really do care about them. You're not going to be trying to prescribe something before you even make a suggestion. And then working with a client's objectives map. We'll look at this a little bit later, but I think the contents of that are really, really important. And all of these tools that you have through the CPSA are fantastic because they take the guesswork out of it. And I know for me personally, having tools and structures and templates help you so that you're, on the days maybe when you're super, super busy, it'll help you make sure that you dot all your I's and you cross on your T's, and you are a consistent salesperson. I think that's super, super important as well. And then we're going to look at return on investment. That's, of course, with anything, they want to make sure that they get value for what money they're investing. And then we'll look business case. They have a model in the CPSA that's fantastic. It's very simple, but it works really, really well. I use it in my own business all the time. And then your unique value proposition. I've heard it, I think that is probably another one of the really key things with any kind of sales, is really understanding what differentiates you from your competitor. Why would they choose you over your competitor? And how, knowing that, you can tailor it to meet your customers' needs. You need to do your homework. You need to really understand what it is that you do that you can bring to your customers. And this really comes from a lot of preparation and, as much information as you can find. Unfortunately, nowadays finding information about your client is a lot easier than it used to be. I might be dating myself, but finding that kind of information that we can find it with a flick of our mouse, we can find out all kinds of things about our customers. We can look at their website, we can look at history, we can look through news articles, you can look all over the place, and you can get a really good sense of who the customers are. Sometimes you might even be able to see, when an acquisition is happening, so that would present other kinds of problems. But the most important thing is that when you get in front of the customer, that you understand who they are, who their decision makers are as much as possible, and the typical goals and issues, particularly in a given industry, because sometimes industries have similar problems, different companies, but same industry. So really learning an in-depth knowledge about their business. So we're going to go along now, and we're going to look at step number 1. And, I think building rapport is often done intuitively. If you think about people that you connect with, or that people that you trust, or people that you have relationships with, more often than not, a lot of it happens organically. There's this whole energy. But it's really important when you're doing the initial greeting and introduction. Often this will take place in the lobby, as you're walking back to the meeting room. Be friendly, be on time, use eye contact, shake hands, and thank the customer for their time. It's a valuable resource these days, and when they're taking time out to meet with you, you want to make sure that it's a valuable use of their time. And I think this sounds very basic, but sometimes people forget. They absolutely forget. And so, just as a really quick reminder, the most important thing is that you want to establish a warm relationship with your customer. If typically we don't trust people, that do business with people that we don't trust. And if you can't build that rapport initially, I think it's 7 seconds, people will decide whether they like you or not. So it's really important to make sure that you follow those steps and you be professional through the whole process. So the first part of it all is honesty. If you want to build a trusting relationship, it's critical that we recognize our honest intentions, knowing that you're there to fulfill a need for your clients, investigating ways that you're able to helping them, and making sure that the customer perceives this as honesty is another thing altogether, that they are actually, they get that sense. And I think, you know, I said it in the course, we all have built-in, I call them BS detectors. We can tell when someone's not being 100% honest with us. And then demonstrating competence, that is very important. So if you're a subject matter expert, or you're a, you know, you're a leading organization in a particular field, you know, this is really where you can show your expertise. This is where your testimonials, this is where you know, the competence, and being able to show that you are competent and that your company is competent in a particular area. And you look at propriety. This is where you want to follow the industry norms, certain social norms. So dressing appropriately, being on time, being prepared. It was funny, I read an article, I guess it was about a year ago, and one of, you know, customers, what they were complaining about salespeople, and the biggest thing was not being prepared, not coming ready to, you know, provide solutions, and not doing their homework and not being ready. So you want to show that you're not that kind of a salesperson. And then establishing commonality. This is a really, really important, and it goes beyond the old days when they used to say, you know, look at a picture on the wall, or, you know, you might see a statue or something, and try to connect with them. It goes back to being honest. Like you may not be a golfer, but you could certainly ask questions about golf, or relate something that's really important to there. And it's really good to, you know, explore mutual interests. And sometimes it's great because you can find all of that out on social media. I know there was one gentleman I connected with recently, and he isn't my customer yet, but he will be. I know it just based on our conversations. But we connected because he used old barrels to make furniture, and so that's how we started to chat. So I was able to open the door, just being really curious about what he did, and then we would establish a relationship from there. So you can look at professional things, you know, if they're involved in charities or volunteer work or anything along those lines. There could be hobbies or personal interests, anything that you can do that would help you build rapport and move it to the next step, which is, and part of that is also understanding different personality styles. And, you know, the most important thing is to meet them where they are. It's not about so much mirroring, or, you know, years ago they used to teach you to mirror and all those kind of things. This is really, no, this is more of a meet them where they are, and then model that for them. So if you're talking to a driver, you know, you'll probably know from my voice, that's what I am. I talk very quickly. I'm fast moving, they're logical thinkers. You know, they need to be approached in the same style that they possess. Although this cannot be a competitive in nature. You need to come across that you're collaborating with them, but most important that you're dealing with tasks and fast. And a lot of these kind of people don't require the opening of your email saying, I hope you had a great weekend, or things along those lines. So these are just little telltale signs that you can tell just by the way they're talking. Are they talking fast? Are they telling you versus slower and asking? And then you can look at an analytical. And just by the name of the being analytical, it says, pretty much says it all. They look to things more studied approach to everything. You know, issues are broken into their logical components and methodically addressed. So I always say when you're dealing with an analytical, you have to put all of the information in, say, a proposal and the backup and your reasoning and that. Whereas with the driver, you'll give them an overview. You'll have the sort of the Coles Note version, if you will, and then bring it backwards, have the backup if it's ever needed, and knowing who that is. And it's very easy to tell. Once you start to get comfortable with this, you can start to tell who they are and build rapport much faster. And then amiable is the person that's someone who moves somewhat more slowly and methodically. They're more feeling oriented and require appeal to their instincts and softer side. So this would be the person that you would ask them how their weekend was, or if you've learned something about their family or their personal life, you would be able to connect them with that. The expressive require, again, somewhat faster, louder. They're a little bit more emotional. They have a lot of energy. in there. You can tell them, and they're people focused. And again, once you recognize that, then you can go and you can model your behavior or go to where they are and modify how you communicate to build that rapport. And if you go to the GoToWebinar dashboard, there's a quick reference guide that you can use as a reminder. And it's also there on the Learning Hub at the CPSA. So they've got valuable resources there, and this is one of them. So if you've forgotten or you're not familiar with it, you could go back to it and just to keep going. And now we're going to move along to step number 2, which is establishing context. So once you start to build rapport, you know, there will come a natural moment when you transition into the business conversation. It happens very organically usually. And this is where you can explain your philosophy of doing business, how you like to work with your customers, you know, making some promises designed to expel the most common fears. In fact, sometimes that's one of the most effective way to avoid objections in the future is to address their fears up front. And I know we talked about that in our course as well. So you want to be able to restate your unique value proposition and really emphasizing the WIFM, the what's in it for me of the client. It's so super important. And you can relate back to, in step 2, you can relate to the 3 Ps, we call it, the purpose, the process, and the payoff. And this means having a clear purpose, a clear process, and a clear payoff for the meeting that your client has agreed with. And so the purpose would be, why is the meeting taking place? What is the goal of the meeting? What are the outcomes? What do you want to have done by the time you're finished? And then the process is, how will the meeting happen? Is it going to be a virtual meeting? Is it going to be a face-to-face? You know, what's the location? What's the process that needs to take place for this meeting? And then the payoff. What's in it for the customer? Why on earth would they spend the time meeting with you? So if you think about the purpose, the process, and the payoff, I always recommend sending an agenda ahead of time so that people can get aligned with it. And if you send it far enough in advance, if they want to add anything to it, it can be more of a collaborative effort. That's what I've found to work really well for me, is I send it off rather than it being, you know, cold and just one way based on yours. You could have a little bit of collaboration back and forth and say if they'd like to add anything or change anything, and then it's a bit of a collaborative agenda, and it would actually be able to connect you with the clients a little bit deeper. So the best practice is to use this format in the meeting invite. You can reference this back to you, the purpose of your meeting, the process, and the payoff, keeping it really, really simple and easy to follow. Okay, so that's step number 2. We're going to go along now to step number 3. And really, that's what you're doing the whole time in this whole process, is gaining agreement to participate. You know, you want to be in partnership with your customer. It's most important that you, before proceeding, it's critical that you gain your customer's agreement. When I first started, I didn't always do this, and I would proceed making some assumptions, and more often than not that would end up being a mistake, and I would have to retract and do things over and things like that. So working in collaboration with them and actually assuring them that you won't pressure them to make a decision. That's super important to them, because if they feel that you're going to come in and try to talk them into put a square peg in a round hole or something along those lines, they're going to be reluctant to meet with you. And then you're going to assure them that they don't have to feel obliged to buy from you. That's where you're going to do your homework, and you're going to make sure that they want to buy from you, that they can see the value in it, but you're not going to pressure them in any way. And that you'll always bring current and accurate information. Really important, very, very important, that what you bring to them is current, because you don't want to have something that's 6 months or 8 months or even a year, a year old. When you come and meet with a client, these promises allow your customer to feel open around you and feel that you're being honest with them. And I think the most important promise is, I won't waste your time. And I say that to customers all the time. In fact, I add a statement personally that says, every person that has ever met with me has unanimously agreed it's been a good, an excellent use of their time. And I've found that, and I ask at the end of each call or each meeting, was this a good use of your time? And they always say yes. And so somehow you can always make sure that they understand that others have met with you as well. And that goes back to your testimonials and, building credibility. All of this all molds into one thing. And sometimes they overlap and you can go, you go through the steps, but you could be bringing something to build rapport into any one of these. Now we're going to look at step number 4, which is customer consultative investigation. And this is really what we consider the heart of the consultative process. It's really important to be asking questions that, you must understand the client's needs. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to be able to ask the right questions. And this gives the salesperson the opportunity to demonstrate social evidence by talking about references, testimonial, really listening to the customer. I think besides asking great questions, listening is one of the most important skills you can have. I mean, those old days of the gift of the gab makes no sense actually, because it's when you're listening to the client that you actually get the information that you need. And it'll demonstrate to the customer while you're gathering their information how important what they're saying is to you. And so if you look at the how the customer's business operates, you want to be able to understand that. So have questions design that. What's important to the client? The client's business goals and issues, problems and obstacles, very, very important to understand that. Prioritization of the needs, and then potential business impact and ROI. We go back to this a lot because they want to know what's in it for them, what's the most important, and keys to mobilizing movement, because you want to know who all the team players are, who's there, how are they going to keep this moving forward. That's the most important thing, is to keep moving forward in all of the steps. You want to, there is actually on your dashboard, there is a reference, a template on the investigative topics that will help you at this stage through the process. And some of the questions are there. And I think most the people that I've worked with and I've coached often will modify some of these questions so that they're specific to their client's needs. But I think it's really, really, really important at this stage that you have some templated information, especially if you're new and you're new in that industry or you're new with a particular client. It is really important that you come across as really confident and go from there. So we're going to pause for a moment, and I have a question for you. What are some of the topics that must be explored to truly understand the customer's business and deliver genuine consultative value? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to respond in the chat box to that, and Kate can let me know once she's got a few answers.
So Gary has said target market.
Okay, yeah.
And we have Jason said what problem they are trying to fix.
Yep.
Warren said available budget, has budget been determined. We had revenue streams, business needs and objectives, current pain points.
Mm-hmm.
Customer goals and objectives, both short-term and long-term.
Cool. Looks like everybody's covered most of it. The only thing I would add to that would be the customer's buying decision process. Like, how do they make decisions? Who needs to be in the room? And then any company politics. I think, great. That's wonderful feedback.
And just a few other answers came in. It was current challenges and competitive threats, and also how they operate, which is.
Oh, perfect. That's exactly what we just said. I spoke too soon.
Oh, there was a question. What do you mean by company politics?
So company politics could be something, there may be an acquisition. There could be, the president is in the process of being transitioned out or in. There could be a restructure going on. It's just a sort of a global statement so that if you know, as an example, I had a call, I won't mention the name of the company, but I had a call with an organization with a colleague of mine, and we went in and we presented and we went through the whole process and got all the information. And then when we were coming back on the Thursday. We made an appointment to come back on the Thursday, present our proposal. And on the Wednesday, they changed presidents. So they put everything on hold. So I would put that under the umbrella of politics. So you need to know if, I mean, sometimes you don't know, but I mean, if you can know that there's an acquisition or they're, acquiring new companies, maybe there's expansions, reorg, all of those kind of things. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So we're going to move along now to investigation topics. And, this is a part of step 4. And really, you're looking to uncover a lot of information. And in order to be truly consultative salesperson and a resource to your clients, you must really seek to understand their business. And sometimes even know them better, because some people they're very short-sighted because they're living in it. I've had conversations with people where I've seen something that they were too close. You can't see the trees for the forest. And so sometimes you can actually be, become their consultant as well as their salesperson. And if I'm just going to add one thing on this at this point, I always think that how you work with your clients or how you connect with your clients or communicate with your clients is you're going to show them through this whole process who you are and what it would be like to work with you. So if you're on time, you say what you do and you do what you say and you follow up and you give them accurate information and you ask great questions, then they know that that's who you are as a person. And that has been my experience when people have given me feedback. One of the reasons they chose me is because I didn't disappear when I said what I was going to do. So I think all through this whole 8 steps, they're evaluating you. What would it be like to work with this person? Because once you're on board with them, depending on your product or service, you could be, integrated into their business quite a bit. So just keeping that in the back of your mind, that they're always assessing and making sure that you'd be a fit. Not only your processes, but your personality as well, because I think it's really, really important. So you want to be able to look at, so these are the things you would look at: your current situation, your future situation. You want to be able to identify the gap, and the buying process decision is super important. Like, who are the stakeholders, who needs to be there, who are influencers, who might be your coach, like really taking that whole step that we did in the class and really understanding who the players are. What's the competitive situation? One of my favorite questions to ask is, who else is bidding on this work? And 9 times out of 10, they'll tell me. So I know who I'm up against. I know my competition. And then time and budget constraints. I think it's really important that you understand, when are they looking at doing something? And I've had people investigating training, that's what we do, months and months in advance. Are there budget constraints? I've had companies that, they want to do training, but they don't have the money till, the next budget, the next fiscal year or something. And we've been able to work out some arrangements that help us work with them and to be able to do it. So it's really, really important to understand their budget constraints. And again, company politics, what we just talked about, and their success criteria. So what would success look like? What are your expectations? If we were to move forward with this, what would you like to see by such and such a date or whatever? You need to know 100% how the company operates, what's really important to the organization, the core values and goals and issues, and if there's any problems to reaching those. So sometimes there's obstacles. I've had situations where their LMS system wasn't able to take on an online program that we were presenting, and things like that. Understanding what limitations there might be and the challenges of them to actually move forward with you, and the potential impact of the ROI. We come back to that all of the time. And then keys to mobilizing movement, a sense of urgency for taking actions, and the logistics of making it happen, like making sure that everybody knows who is supposed to do what and by when. and having, great lines of communication. This is where your sort of organization skills will really come in handy. And understanding all of the details. It's very important to quantify criteria that are not precise by asking clarifying questions. So, we want to do something in the future. What is the future? Is that 3 months, 6 months? Like being really precise and not vague about any of the situations, because otherwise you're going to have to speculate, and sometimes you can speculate wrong. So I think it's really, really important. When we talk about company politics, I'd like to go back to that for a second, is to make sure that you ask clarifying questions and expanding questions. And of course, even if you hear rumors about something, never gossip. Never, sometimes you hear things, and I would never gossip or carry tales or anything about any company to anybody. So I think it's really important. So once you've got all of this done and you're looking at your investigative topics, then you want to do is look at your client objectives map. And I love this. I think it simplifies everything. So, you're going to look at the key business results and measures, and you need to see all these building on each other. So what business measures or results does the client target? So depending on the company or the industry, could be things like shareholder value, could be sales, could be revenue, could be profit, could be increased output, could be improved quality, could be things like cost or time savings. Things like customer satisfaction, which is a huge thing for clients, especially in competitive. You want to make sure that if whatever you're offering them will help them deliver better customer service to their clients, you want to make sure that you address that. Reduce turnover. Companies lose people because they're frustrated, or they can't get things done, or stuff. You want to be able to reduce that. You want to make sure that people are staying in and being part of the team. You want to be able to address. Plus, with turnover, it's very expensive, and anybody who's ever had to do any kind of, learning or recruitment understand the costs involved with hiring a new person and all those kind of things, not to mention what it does to morale. So that could be a key issue for some of your clients. And then you look at the business issues. What are the current business issues that the client is facing? The problems, opportunities. We did SWOT analysis in our program, and you could do that at any time. You could actually do it for your clients. You could do it for yourself. I think it's a great, easy tool to quickly look at what is going on. You could look at, you want to look at things like poor performance results, emerging markets. So especially with these disruptive markets that are going on in the world today, like, is there a possibility that the industry that they're in, is there something that's disrupting it? Is that, do you need to work with them to provide them a leading edge, or whatever that might be? And increased competitive threats and pressure from senior management and shareholders. So often some of the issues are coming from internally. So they have to make decisions or make purchases, or upgrade equipment or things like that, or put in systems, because they are getting feedback from either the management or the shareholders that these kinds of things are causing problems. So they could come from many different areas. And then you really want to look at the needs and objectives. So what are the tangible needs, objectives, or triggers that you can address? So these are things like new systems, could be new products, could be improved productivity, new processes, could be an enhanced quality, all of those things. There could be many, many different ones to add here, but most important, you want to be able to address whatever it is that they are needing at that time. So we're coming up now for our first poll, and we've gone through the first 4 steps. I'd just like to take a quick temperature check, and I'm going to ask Kate if she will let me know which steps are, who's answering. The poll is now open. What step are you in when you restate the objective for the meeting? So you're either in greeting and building rapport, establishing context, gain agreement to participate, or consultative investigation.
I'll just wait a few more moments for people to get their votes in. Okay, so we had 50% of people say step 2, 42% say step 3, and 8% said step 4.
So step 2 is correct, establishing contacts. Good listening. Great. Okay, so we're going to move along now to step number 5. And this is where you can really, really shine and show your listening skills and your ability to understand what the client is saying. And it always, always, always should be a dialogue and a collaboration, not a monologue. And you should demonstrate your active listening skills, and you summarize everything you've heard and verify, which issues are the most important, and this will help identify their needs. So you want to recap about the customer's business, what you understand, what you heard, what their goals and challenges are, the keys to success for them, and then ask the customer, please confirm the accuracy of your summary. So you could say, is that an accurate summary of what we've discussed so far? One of the things I always like to ask, have I missed anything? Did I understand that correctly? And then prioritizing the issues discussed, because sometimes there's more than one issue, and you need to be able to make sure that, the most important one gets addressed first. And then qualify how they will measure success. So it's really important that you have, a metrics that will measure success, because how else are you going to know that you are you're going to be successful in moving forward with your solution? And this is again where a place where your testimonials will come in, where you've said to your customer XYZ, they worked with you, they implemented your program, and they increase sales by 25% or something along those lines. Somewhere, this is where you can actually quantify how they could measure based on some of your previous experience. It might be different, but at least it'll give them a sense that you know what you're doing and that you've got experience with this. And then the last one, which when I coach people, one of the things that a lot of the times they get uncomfortable with is state the risk of not addressing the issue. So really looking at, so Mr. Customer, if you don't move forward with this, if we were to look forward 6 months, what would happen? And sometimes just having them think about that, depending on the impact of why they're talking to you in the first place, could be enough to tip the scale in your favor, to say, you know what? We've been dealing with this for whatever length of time, or it's been causing us this issue or that issue. And often situations can cause multiple issues, some of them, minor, some of them major. But I always find that if you ask this question, if they're stalling or, they're not sure, or, even at the end of it, to sort of to get them into the sense of urgency to be able to completely move forward, So I think that's a very, very important question to ask. Quantifying all of those are very, very important. But again, going back to what I said earlier, the most important thing here is you listen, and you've captured the information accurately, because this is the information you're going to be using to create your solution. And then we move along to step number 6. And you're going to describe how your organization's product or service perfectly addressed the situation. And, it's really important that once you've done a thorough job of consultative investigation, you'll have uncovered all of the information that you need to provide a solution. It may be a proposal around a specific product service. Some companies just do quotes. Some people come back and bring a formal proposal, or they'll send a proposal. Some of them will be able to do a quote right on the spot based on the information. Again, that depends on your industry and what your norms are. So no matter how it is, there's a few principles that you really have to apply. So the solution must be built around the customer's business, not your products. That's key in all of this. The client objectives Matt discussed earlier illustrates the way the customer situation considers the customer situation in order to help them build a strong solution. And then it also tells you have to demonstrate your unique value proposition. And again, this is engaging in a dialogue and a collaboration, not a monologue. It's just not the salesperson talking. It's about asking questions back and forth, and it's actually, clients only care about, honestly, your solution what your solution will do for them. That's really the most important thing you can think about, is that, and it really, if it's presented like a business case, it actually is, and the financial benefit, it's fantastic. It actually simplifies things, and they can clearly see the direction that your product or service will take them. And so once you've explored all the solutions, then you move along on to step number 7, which is to quantify how your solutions will help the customer. Talk a lot about how you will measure the results, because it's one thing to say you'll save them money, but how will you know they're saving money? So you need to be able to do it, because customers will make decisions based on the impact that it will have on their business. And it's important for salespeople to help the customer build a logical business case. I think that that's super, super important to be able to do that. And, when you do that, it will increase your close rate for sure. So you want to look at how you save them money. Could be how you increase their sales. It could be saving time. And some people say saving time and money are basically in the same bucket. Increasing efficiencies, increasing output, improving quality. Maybe that's an issue. Improving customer service or customer satisfaction, improving employee satisfaction and retention. All of those are where areas that your client would, if that's the areas that you can help them with, any of those areas that you can help them with, then that would help move the process forward. And we're going to move along now, and I love this next slide. It's about business cases. This is the one I use myself. I love it. It's simple, it's easy to follow, and it's like, you've got smart people working with you. They're paid to make good decisions, and the more logical case that you can make, when you make a business case, then you can put it out in a format that's very logical. You're much more likely to close your deals. And so if you look at the background, what's the current situation? What are the business challenges? You're going to write that up. You're going to acknowledge that you know what it is, what their objectives of, solving this situation or changing the situation. What are the goals? What are the problems that have been identified? What challenges are they having? What prioritizing and why? Why is this a priority now? Because sometimes it can impact other things. And then you just have your solution, your proposed solution. Sometimes we've had it where in our business where we've had several options. There might be option A and option B. I don't know if that would work for you folks on the line, but sometimes there could be alternate solutions, or there could be a multi-step solution where, you might start with this and then build and go on from there. And then the next part of it would be expected results. And this is your financial justification, your ROI, and again, putting in testimonials and how you've been really successful with other organizations and what they've done is really, and this is a really simple, I love this format. And then your proposed action plan, and you just put down what you would do, next steps, and how that would move forward. I hope everybody likes it as much as I do. Okay, so we're going to move along now to step number 8. Which is really the gaining agreement to the next step and really getting that secure the go forward commitment, which is what we've been doing all along. It's one step at a time, right? But really important is that everybody gains agreement onto the next steps, what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, who's going to do what. It's best if this is put in writing so everybody has a timeline, everybody knows who's expected to do what. And you want to get agreement to return with a proposal or a business case. This is what you want to do at this stage. But as I said earlier, maybe you've got enough at this stage to actually just give them a quote depending on your business. The customer, once they've received all the justification, financial justification, the next step is for them, logical step is them to buy, and then you to ask them to buy. That is one of the things I've seen over the years is a lot of times, sales reps neglect to actually ask. They give all the information, but they actually don't ask for the order. And I think sometimes they can leave, as they say, money on the table if they don't do that. There's also a philosophy which I buy into as well. If you've done a really good job of all of the steps in the 8-step process, often the client will close themselves. You know, they'll just say, well, when can we start? Or, you know, I've got this date open, or they will close it themselves. But if they don't, it's really important that you ask. So what you want to get at this stage is a follow-up meeting. You want to make sure that it's in everybody's calendar, and it's way easier to make sure that you get it in everybody's calendar right then and there, instead of trying to go back and get people. It might be a demonstration, maybe whatever it is that you might have to have a demonstration. It might be a plant tour or a visit to your organization. Maybe that's going to be the logical next step. You need to be able to provide some samples for comparison. Maybe it's a product or service. And a meeting with other decision makers. Maybe they've got I've seen it where they have a committee where they sort of narrow it down to 1 or 2 suppliers, and then the people that are actually open for the selection actually meet with the final decision makers. So that could be it, or it could be a proposal. Whatever it is, it needs to be clearly understood who's going to do what are the timelines, and all of that. And then once you've gone through all of that, and you've, you know, it's going through all of these steps will really help you increase your ability to close new sales. And even with existing clients, it might be a new product or service with an existing client. And so once you've had your meeting, I think it's really important to assess the effectiveness of the meeting. And you can do that by asking feedback from the client and all the attendees. You can say, how did this go? Did we meet your expectations? You know, it's always good to do a self-assessment. I remember when I first started in sales, I had a little notebook with me, and I would go in and I always ask myself, what did I do well? What words did I use? What phrases, what questions worked really, really well? What seemed to give me the answers that I needed? And then what could have I done differently? And I think a little bit of, you know, 5-10 minutes after, not even that long sometimes, just to be able to reflect. But sometimes we're so fast, we don't, and if we're not really present to you know, what is super effective for you and what helps you connect with the customer. And then look at how you met your 3 Ps. How did you meet the purpose? How did you meet the process? And how did you meet the payoff? You know, were the decisions made based on the outcome of the meeting? And is your client happy with the time they invested in you? And so I think they will also determine how successful you'll be to get a second meeting, if there is a second meeting required. If you follow through and you've delivered on what you promised, then chances are pretty high that you'll get that second meeting if that's what's required. Okay, we're going to go now we're coming up close to the end. We've got about 13 minutes left. So I want to ask you, now that we've gone through the last 4 steps, I'd like to take your temperature check again. So what step are you in when you explain solutions? So are you in summarize and prioritize? Are you in explore solutions? Are you in quantify benefits and ROI impact? Or are you secure go forward commitment? Which one of those 4? I see the poll is open.
Just wait a few more moments. Okay. So we had 5% say summarize and prioritize, 55% said explore solutions, and 41% said quantify benefits and ROI impact.
So the correct answer is quantify benefits and ROI impact. So good for you for participating. Thank you so much. And now we're going to move along to actually, there's an additional support tool that I think is fantastic for you to use for preparing and planning, because we're all busy. And, you know, I believe the secret to success is consistency in your processes and follow up and everything that you do, actually. And this is it's on the GoTo dashboard, and it's useful for meeting preparation. So it's just a checkpoint, you know, pre-call planning. What did I prepare? What kinds of things that I need to know for this particular client. You know, all the about greeting and building rapport. It talks about establishing context. You know, you make sure that follow all of these steps, and you will get it so it becomes automatic the more you do it. And then 4 promises. You know, the most important thing is that you have the 4 promises. How are you going to word that in your words so it comes across authentically? And then the consultative investigation, like what are some of the questions you're going to have in the areas of the objectives map, you know, the key business results, the big business issues, things like that. How are you going to summarize? You know, how are you going to prioritize with the needs for the client, explore solutions, you know, quantify benefits and ROI impact, you know, securing that go ahead commitment. Often, you know, you could put it in there, making sure that you have it. You can put down the client's name at the top. You talk off, you know, you could keep this even in a portfolio or something to keep it as a, call it a cheat sheet, if you will, but a tool. I like to think of it as a tool, a resource tool that you can make sure that you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's. And then provide an email at the end to talk about the key points discussed and next steps. So that's available to you now. And actually, we're going to come up now if there are any questions. We've got a few more minutes for questions, and then we'll close off. I have a couple more slides after this. Are you getting any questions, Kate?
I'm just looking. It looks like we might have a mix-up of the handout, so I will make sure that I send a link to the proper handout in the follow-up email.
Yeah.
And then Gary said, what's a good business case template to use?
Well, I personally like the one that I just showed you. It's very, very simple. The only difference is where it says business case at the beginning, the history, like the current situation. I call that executive summary, which really just is exactly the same thing. It talks about what went on in the conversation, but the rest of it I use. It's I think it's a really simple, easy way to do it. I don't know if anybody has any other on the call that has any other suggestions, but for me personally, this one works beautifully.
And I just thrown the form into the handouts area of the GoToWebinar dashboard in case anybody is looking for that. It now is in there.
Oh, I see them. Yep.
And Tim has written in and said, in your professional opinion, what is the most important of the 8 steps to you and why?
Oh, they're all really important, but I think it goes back to in the beginning because people are going to judge you right away. How you show up on that first meeting, prepared, ready to listen, showing, you know, respect, all of those things. I think in the very, very beginning, because we do have a tendency to judge people right away. And so I think, honestly, it's that building rapport, that whole honesty, that very first step, because if at that stage they don't trust you, it's going to reflect in everything else that happens going forward. That's my personal opinion. Did that answer your question?
Tim said, very nice. And Stephanie's written in and said, what should you do if a client wants you to go forward, but you don't think your offer is the right match for them? I
would say so. I've done that. I've had actually really quickly, I had a woman, we do training, all different types of program, and I had a woman as an example who wanted a time management program, and she wanted a half day, and I said to her, I said, would like to come in and talk to you, so I understand. She goes, no, I just need to have daytime management. And I said, well, I'm sorry, that's not the way I work. I really do need to understand so I can connect you with the proper partner. So when I met with her, it turned out they had a merger, and they were two different cultures. And so one was they jokingly called it military, and the other one was on island time. So one company had always had very rigid rules, and the other one was very laid back. And they were both still operating as if they were in the old company. So I told her, I said, this will not solve your problem. You can do 100 time management programs. You need to create a new team code of conduct. You need them to get together and create a document that will show how you're going to move forward together. And she presented it to her president, and they thought it was amazing, and off they went. And about a year later, they did do a time management program. But no, I would tell them your own opinion. And I mean, that's why they have you there. You're an expert. So I would definitely say there might be other options. You could word it and soften it. I'm just wondering if you had considered this option or that option, or, explore it that way. And, without, you want them to say face, you want to be careful. So I was a use of word, verbal softeners, say, I'm wondering, I'm curious, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? This may be another solution. Let's spend a few minutes and see if they were into it. Ultimately, it's their decision, but you want to walk away, know that you've not just taken their word for it, without showing that you're a professional, showing you're the expert, and providing them with that additional information. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And so we had another question come in and say, when a prospect gives you an objection where they ask to visit this later in the year, what are they really saying?
Well, first of all, you want to know why they asked you to meet at this particular time. One of the things I always ask is that what is the triggering event that had you talk to me now? And if it's not a priority, then I've had it where the training, as I talked about earlier, and that's been my experience for years and years and years. There are people that have to plan like 6-8 months out, whatever that is. So you need to find out if this is just part of their planning process. You still ultimately have to know their buying process. What do they typically do for their buying process? And sometimes they're kicking tires. And I ask them that too. Is this just something you're exploring right now? Is this something that, you're not really sure? Because the more you know, the better you can prioritize your time. Because there are people that will do that. I hope that answered the question.
We've also had a few questions come in about accessing the presentation deck, and so that will not be shared, but the recording of this webinar will be shared. And I've also put a couple more handouts that are applicable to this presentation in the handouts area. So there's a business case template and also a professional selling toolkit, which sort of gives a brief summary of each personality style that Cindy spoke about.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming up to the end. We've only got a couple minutes left, and I know everybody's busy, and I want to be able to complete on time. So did you want to speak to this, Kate? The virtual training? Okay.
So we're thankful that you guys are here for training today and that you could join us over your lunch. And we do have a couple more virtual training sessions coming up. On March 31st, we have effective prospecting, and this session is really about helping customers realize why they should speak with you. And on April 16th, we have 4 steps to account management. And so you'll walk away with the tips you need to put together a proactive strategic account plan for each of your key accounts.
Cool. Okay. All right, so we're coming up to the end now, and the CPSA offers designation for every step of your sales career, and I was thrilled when they brought out the CSL. As I said earlier, I had my CSP in 2002, and I've always thought sales was a profession. It wasn't just a job. It wasn't even just a career. It was a profession, and it needed to be recognized the same way your CPA, legal firms, HR people, all have those designations. And, the CPSA sets the gold standard in the industry. Every industry has that body of I don't know the word I'm looking for, that governing body, if you will, that'll set those standards. So, you know, there's a rigor and a due diligence to all this, but you can be so proud when you go through this. And so you can, you know, today's webinar will go through towards your PDU points. And I don't know. I just think that it's really, really important. So if you are considering becoming a sales professional, getting your CSP, it requires 35 hours of recognized professional development in the sales, a college diploma, and 35 hours of recognized professional development. Minimum 4 years verified experience independently managing client accounts. And it's a one-time fee, an application and examination fee of $599. You know, professional certified. I really believe that if there's, you know, 2 people applying for a job, you know, that if you've got your CSP, you're going to be recognized as someone who's very, very serious and very professional. And it's your commitment to yourself. It's an ongoing process. It's not like you get your designation and then you stop. No, it's ongoing. It's lifelong learning, which is the key, I think, to any successful career. And 72% of certified professionals rank in the top 25% of sales within their organization. So I think that everybody who's in sales, who's serious about their career, should consider this. I think that, as I said, I've been a CSP since 2002, and then 2019 when they brought on the CSL, I did it. So I'm very, very pleased and super excited that they have these designations so that we can show ourselves as professionals. So we're closing now. It's 1 minute past. I apologize. We try to keep these things on time. So thank you everyone for your participation, and hope to see you on a future webinar.
Thank you, Cindy, so much.